Welcome to Legend Makers, the podcast where education's true heroes take center stage.
Shine like a ray from the sun. There's something people look for but never can find.
All right, we are back with Legend Makers podcast. Today I have with me Patty Cortez. Patty is from Dallas ISD. If the last name sounds familiar, it's because her husband Omar was here just a couple of weeks ago. He too is at Dallas ISD. You are the campus activities coordinator and you're also a robotics coach. But why don't you tell us a little bit about you, Patty? Fill in the blanks for me there because I know you've got a lot going on. So tell us who you are.
Thank you so much for having me. I do serve a lot of roles on my campus. I'm at School for the Talented in Pleasant Grove. It is a dual language 4-8 campus, so we do serve some elementary and then all of middle school. I am a 6th grade world cultures teacher, a 7th grade Texas history teacher, a 4th grade robotics teacher, and then after school, so that's all by day. After school, I serve as a robotics coach for an all-girls team. And then also this year, Mr. Cortez and I started an all-girls drones team.
Drones so near and dear to my heart, right? I love the drone stuff with the drone legends. That's great. Is your all-girls robotics team the girls in gears?
So that's actually a workshop that they hosted. It was a girl-powered event. They're the Lady Bots. But yes, Girls in Gears is such a major topic I love to talk about, especially this year. So it's a girl-powered event that they decided they wanted to host to help with underrepresentation of females in STEM. So at first, they're in this little bubble where they think they're rock stars because they are, but they didn't realize that outside of the little bubble that they're in, there is a big lack of representation of females, especially Hispanic females in STEM. So that was pretty mind-blowing for them. I had a couple of girls that actually attended a girl-powered event that I helped host a couple years ago. And so this year they asked me like, hey, can we host our own? So I'm like, okay, sure. Let's try to figure out how we can do this. I reached out to our STEM coordinator for the district. He's like, yes, we totally support it. Then we found out we didn't really have a lot of funds for it. So then the girls ran into this obstacle of trying to fundraise and get donations for their event, but they didn't let any of that stop them. They planned all these hands-on STEM activities for girls. They presented, they were the presenters. There were no adult presenters. There were adults there to help them out in case they felt a little shy or needed some sort of classroom management. But they hosted these stations where they had binary bracelets. They had a STEM challenge. They were driving robots. These girls were driving robots, some of them for the very first time ever. There was a coding station where some girls got to code something for the very first time.
Wow.
So they planned this event. They had keynote speakers, some women that came to talk to them to help inspire them. So they ended up reaching about over 80 girls across Dallas ISD through this event. Yes, and so the impact that they made with these girls was amazing. At the end of our stations, we got together, we had this lunch. And the girls talked about how all the girls that were visiting talked about how they were going to go back to their school and share what they learned and share the mission of Girl Powered, which is trying to incorporate more diverse thinkers. So we need more representation from different areas so that we can have those diverse thinkers and problem solvers that we need in real life.
Absolutely. And what grade are we talking about? What grade are these girls?
So the girls my Lady Bots are in 6th through 8th grade. And the girls that attended the event were 3rd through 8th graders.
Wow. So you had 3rd through 8th. Nice.
Yes.
That's great. And I saw the video is on your X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it today.
Yes.
It's cool. Yeah, I was watching it a little bit before we got on here and checking it out a little. It was really cool. So background. So you've been teaching for how long now? I know Omar told me.
This is my 12th year now. Teaching. Yes, year number 12. I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. My mom, when I started teaching, my first year teaching, she pulled out this thing I drew in kindergarten where I said I wanted to be a teacher. And she's like, yep, you did it. You're a teacher. You stuck with it.
You always knew from that young age. What do you think? Why do you think that is? I mean, why do you think what drove you? I mean, even at that young age, you said kindergarten?
Yes.
So why? Do you have any idea like what drove you even at that young age?
My teachers, they helped me the whole way. I was this shy, nerdy little child, very introverted. But the fact that they helped me build up my confidence, even starting at the kindergarten level, I still talk to my kindergarten teacher.
Do you
In
really?
fact, yesterday I saw my pre-K teacher's daughter on campus. She serves a role with the environmental center, and so we had STEM night last night, and I got to see her. But yes, they helped me gain my confidence. They provided a safe space for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yes, they
Wow,
try to help me get out of my shell. They help me find my strengths. And
that's great.
that's what made me want to be able to give back to my community. In fact, I started teaching at the elementary school that I went to.
Really?
So, yeah, so I was working side by
Full
side with
circle.
some of my teachers.
Wow. Now they must be so proud of you.
Yes, for sure. They made sure to always tell me how proud they were of me. It was an honor to be able to collaborate with them, get ideas with
Yeah.
them. And I'm the teacher I am because of my teachers.
That's incredible. And it's not the first time I've heard it. I hear it a lot on this podcast that somebody had an impact, another teacher on somebody said, that's what I want to do. I mean, look what they did for me. And what is and so you've been teaching, you said 13, I apologize, 13
12
years,
years.
12 years. Do you have anybody come back to you at this point in time and say, look, Ms. Cortez, hey, I'm now in college or I'm in high school and I'm going to this school and thank you. Have you ever had that come back full circle for you?
So this past school year was my first graduating class. And I was able to go because my nieces were actually graduating as well that year. So they were in second grade when I first started teaching second grade. So last year I got to see that graduating class. Turns out the salutatorian was my second grade student,
Really?
and she had a whole article written about herself. She's headed to Harvard, and she grew up in the
There you
same
go.
community that I grew up in. So seeing that is just the full circle process is when it really, really makes an impact on you as a teacher. Like at first it's
Sure.
like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? It's so hard. But the why is those students, seeing them go full circle, seeing them accomplish things that we weren't able to accomplish when we were their age is just fulfilling.
It's amazing, isn't it? And
Yes.
and you've always been in the tech space or I mean, does that tell me how long you've been in tech? Like what got you into tech?
Tech. I'm no engineer. I didn't take any engineer courses. In fact, I only started doing robotics as a co-curricular 8 years ago. 8 years
Okay.
ago, and that's because I was peer pressured into it.
You were.
Um,
By
one of my
who?
colleagues was like, "Hey, the district is doing this thing, this robotics thing, and it's pretty new, and they're trying to promote it. So, do you want to do it?" And I said, "No, I don't. I don't know anything about robotics. I don't want to do it." And he's like, "Come on, we can learn together. I don't know either. Let's just do it. We'll be co-coaches and we'll help each other out." So okay, here we go. I do it. He focused on teaching the kids the programming, the engineering. I focused on the engineering design notebook on STEM because I didn't have that confidence in programming
Okay.
or building.
Uh-huh.
So I helped the kiddos with that. We made it to the world championship year
Nice.
one, year
First year
two.
one.
Yes, year one, we
Amazing.
made it because of that engineering design notebook and teaching them how to
Yeah.
interview, how to speak with people, and going through their whole design process. Then COVID hits.
Hmm.
I did have two little third graders that year that COVID hit. And so this next year we come back, we come half the students are on campus, half of them are at home. And so they asked me if they could start their own team.
Hmm.
And I was like, why? We already have one. Why do we want to start another team? And well, they wanted their own all girls team where they
Hmm.
could all take a part of everything. So while yes, we were a co-ed team and yes, we encourage like involvement of everybody in every aspect,
Hmm.
these little third graders were a little intimidated by the fifth grade boys.
Sure.
So they're like, let's just start our own. And I told them again, like, I don't know programming, I don't know building. I usually just help
Hmm.
you guys out with this notebook and with these challenges. And I don't know if we can do it. And they're like, yes, you told us we can do it. So we can do it and we can all do it together.
Yeah.
So who am I to say no? Again, being peer pressured, but this time by two little third grade girls to start our own team. And that's where the
Wow.
Ladybot started.
The
And they
ladybots.
made it
That's
to
great.
Worlds during COVID off of their STEM research challenge.
Yeah.
Um, Then the next year they did really great at Worlds. Next
Amazing.
year they made it to Worlds. Thankfully, the entire years of existence. That was
Wow.
in elementary school when I was still teaching at elementary school.
Yeah.
So then my last two girls are graduating elementary school, and it's like, okay, I have to find a whole new set of girls, or what am I going to do now?
Right.
So then I had been teaching third grade math and science, or second grade math and science, for 10 years now, 10 years at that point. And I was like, maybe it's time for me to try something new. So three of my original four lady bots had moved to the same school. So I was like, you know what? Let me see what I can find over there. And so there
Hmm.
was a position for history, for Texas history, open at that campus. So I
Huh.
applied and I got in, but I didn't tell the girls anything, that I was leaving or that I was applying or anything. So then word got around that I was leaving that school, and they're like, "Why are you leaving?" I'm like, "Well, why do you care? You're leaving too." They're like, "But what about the lady bots, the next group of lady bots?" And I was like, "Well, lady bots will always exist as long as you girls continue." So then secret gets out that I'm moving to middle school with them. And so
Ah.
we moved to middle school together. They started in sixth grade, and I started with teaching seventh grade Texas history. We kept the lady bots alive.
And you
We
brought
recruited
the
some
lady
more
bots
girls.
over to the middle school.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then we moved on to middle school. We recruited more. We went from 3 to 9
Wow.
and started the
Nice.
middle school IQ with the lady bots.
That's great. Good for you. Look at that. I love it. I love it. And you're still going strong.
Yes, we're still going strong. We're trying to now reach out to the community with these Girls and Gears events. They told me, can we do this every year? And I'm like, of course, as long as y'all are willing to work with me and y'all want to do it, we will continue doing it and hopefully being able to impact more girls around our district.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, coming out of I'm not an educator. I watch, you're juggling, sounds like you're spinning a lot of plates. I know you love what you do. You have to love what you do to be able to do this. And you can feel it. Like I can actually sitting here listening to you, I can hear how much you love what you do. What is the biggest challenge for you though? I think as we think about who's listening and what is the challenges that you face and how do you deal with those?
So the biggest challenge, 12 years into this, content isn't so much a challenge. Once you can teach one thing, you can probably teach multiple things.
Mhm.
It's easy to pick up on new content as long as you believe in yourself and you know that you're learning. Sometimes you're learning with the students.
Mhm.
That's not the difficult aspect of it. For
Yeah.
me, it's more so juggling all these roles that we have to, all these hats that we have to wear as a teacher,
Yeah. Yeah.
from being counselor to these kids to trying to teach them content. I struggle particularly because I do teach history, and some kiddos
Mm.
don't
Mm.
really like history, or they don't feel like that it's necessary to learn about history. So
Mm.
trying to make it engaging for them, interesting for them. Um, so trying to be an entertainer, a
Yeah.
counselor, a psychologist, making sure they have a safe space. It does take a toll on you when you're
Yeah, for
trying
sure.
to wear all these hats. So it's super important to make sure to take time out of the day to breathe, to disconnect
Yeah.
and relax, put things aside. Know that even though we're teachers and it's hard, it's not a profession where you clock in, clock out.
Yep.
We do kind of have to clock out after a bit, or else
You
it
do.
is going to provide some wear and tear on your body.
A little mental and physical relax,
Yes,
get out of it for a little bit. You take some personal care, both mentally and physically.
for
And
sure.
and what are some strategies for that? What do you like to do to decompress? What's your thing?
So binge watching TV, that's
Yeah,
the
you go.
easiest way to get me to disconnect. If I'm so into my show, I will not even realize my phone has been going
There
off
you
for a
go.
while.
Sometimes you got to
But
do that.
Omar and I do love to go camping, get out
You
into
do.
nature, uh,
Yes, important.
just hang out. And there we literally have to disconnect from
You
everything
do,
around
and
us.
that's so important. And when you speaking of nature, I was talking to this guy Gavin McCormick. I don't know if you're familiar with Gavin. He's this Australian guy, kind of
Mhm,
Montessori teaching guy. He's amazing. He's got this thing called
mhm.
upschool.co. Are you familiar with this guy, Gavin? No, he's
No.
wild. So this guy's incredible. You have to watch the episode. But he was
Okay.
talking about learning and retention and getting kids interested. And when you talked about history, and again, I just don't know what you're doing in your classrooms. And so but just from my pure naivete, he was talking about like, look, bring touch, right? Experiential, even if it's history. Like, can you bring a piece of something in that the kids can touch and feel? He was talking about the skin. This guy's like studied neuroscience and he's writing a book on the neuroscience of learning and all this. And the skin is your biggest organ, right? And so
Yeah.
as you touch and you feel things, it becomes more real than listening. Somehow can they experience the history that you're teaching versus listening about the history that you're teaching? Is there some, do you
Yes.
ever do anything like that? Like,
I haven't done so much the touch. But one thing my students really enjoy is they love the gossip, right? So they love to gossiping about what's going on, who's dating who, whatnot. So I've managed to try to turn in all these stories in history to some sort of gossip and relate it to how it has to deal with a breakup or how it has to deal with
like gamified in a little bit of a way, in a weird way.
yes,
Yeah. Like the gossip
yes.
game or something, right?
Yes, and so that's really kept them really intrigued versus the lessons when I don't do the gossip style learning for them.
Yeah.
So that's another way, but I do want to try the touch. Maybe bringing,
Try something like that.
yes,
Like
bringing
bring
in
an
some artifacts.
artifact or something.
Yes,
I'd love to hear how that goes for you, because
for sure.
when he said it, it made so much sense. And I was like, oh, yeah. Like, if I can see it, like, this guy's wild. Like, when I tell
Mhm.
you, he will go and he does like teaching in Nepal and stuff like this. So, like, India kids that had never seen an ocean in their lives. And he'll charter a boat to like the Antarctic, and he'll go and have a film crew with him, and he'll create a curriculum on Upschool, and it's free. You can go you can
Oh,
go
okay.
look at his things
Uh-huh.
and you can check it out. And he's like, oh, there's a polar bear. Let's learn about the polar bear. And he's like, it's right over there. It's this giant polar bear. And I've watched this guy for years. I was like, wow. And so like, and I asked him, my question was, okay, well, not everybody can get to the Antarctic. So how do other teachers like bring it in? And he said teach them about history, bring a piece of the history, bring something in that they can feel. Hey, you want to teach them about like agriculture or something? Put some dirt on their table. Let them play in the dirt for a minute, like some soil or something like this. Like, really cool. So I'd love to hear, if you try something, I'd love to hear your experience with something tactile.
All these light bulbs are going off. In a couple of weeks, we're going to go into the boom and bust cycles of the cotton industry. So maybe
Oh,
planting a little seed, seeing what they have to go through. I'm
there you
liking these ideas.
go. That is cool. See, right
Yes.
there. That's going to give them. And oh, the other thing he was talking about was letting them choose. So decisions and the choice of who do you work with.
Yes.
Like you get to pick this, and oh, you could do a little plan. All right, I see. This is cool. This is why we have these conversations. This is really
Mhm.
cool. And I'd really like to see you try it and report back on, maybe in the next episode. Maybe you'll show us like a big reveal of how this worked out.
Yes. I
Because it
like
makes
it.
it fun for the kids, right? Like
It
it's going to be
does.
interesting. And I bet you've already got a leg up because you've started your own robotics clubs and things like this. You know how to go from like that 0 to 1 kind of. I haven't done this, but I've done other things that are kind of analogous to this. And I've just take the tech side and I'll make it, history, but I'll bring in
Yes.
something. See, because that's what robotics and things like that have, right? They are working with these things. They're coding, they're touching, they're flying, they're building, they're creating. Whereas history, can you bring that kind of into the history class?
Yes. So last year, when we were doing our whole review they have a district assessment called the ACP at the end of the semester. So when we were doing review time, before we got into our actual pencil paper review type thing,
Mhm.
they built something using the
Yeah.
robotics pieces. So I had kids build a model of the Alamo with sliding doors.
Yeah.
Some of them built a structure of
Oh,
spindle
yeah.
top. So that like they found an event, they related it to the era in which it happened in history, and then created something from that time. So now
Excellent.
they're not just using the history of it, they're being hands-on with it.
And was the retention better for those students? Do you?
Oh, they did amazing. From semester 1 to semester 2, we went from a 92 2%, low 90s in the passing rate for the assessment to high 90s. I think I only
Amazing.
had one person not pass at the end of the year.
That's great. So you could see the difference that it made
For
having that kind of
sure.
physical component to it.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. So, all right, that's cool. Very cool. So I would like to hear what you're doing future time. So one of the things that so you kind of got your why, right? So I like to dig in and understand somebody's why, and your why is you were inspired as a very young person. You wanted to turn around and be that kind of inspiration to somebody. I was talking to, I think it was Brittany Tarr. Do you know Brittany? Some of these
No.
teachers, you guys all, we need that. You guys are such a big community and it's amazing. There's so many of you and there's so many of you doing really cool things and everybody's different and unique in their own way. And it's like, if I could just pull you all together and then just shake it all up and pull the cool, you work with her. Cause she had this great saying the other day of, you know, I was asking her about like burnout. And you kind of touched on this. It's hard and tough. And I said, well, what would you say to those people going through it? And her response was, look, like you show up because, yeah, you might be having a rough morning, but just remember, for a lot of those kids, you are the light in their day.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
and she's
Yes.
like, you may be the only light in their day. Their home
Yes.
life might be tough, challenging. And so you have to put that face on and be that person. That was cool because I was like, yeah, you're right. We might be having a rough day, but somebody's always got a rougher day. Right?
Yes,
Like I wake
for
up
sure.
grateful every morning. I go, because if I'm having a bad day, I guarantee you there's somebody having a terrible day. And
Yes.
look, for as far as I'm concerned, I'm healthy and everything's good. The other thing
Mhm.
that this Gavin guy said, and he talked about shaking their hands as they entered into the room.
I do that. Yes.
Do
And people
you?
look at me crazy.
And he said,
Um,
and I said fist bump, and he went, mm-mm-mm.
nope.
He called me out on it. It goes back to the skin. It goes back to when you shake. He said, like what? Because I was a rough kid, right? So he goes, imagine your teacher when you walked in the room said, "Good morning, Scotty. Come on in," and grabbed you by the hand and shook your hand and said, "How was it last night? Did you fly any drones? What did you do last night? Tell me what's going on. Maybe you can someday teach me to fly a drone." Now I matter.
Yes.
And the touch is a trust thing. I trust this person.
And in the way a person shakes your hand, you can almost sense how they're feeling that day.
Yeah.
If like after a while you get to learn their handshake. And if that handshake isn't the same as it normally is, it's like, I know something's wrong. What's going on? Hey, can you wait for me right here? I finished greeting the rest of the students. All right, talk to me. What's going on? And it's all about building the relationships with your kids to
Yeah.
where you know how they're feeling, because when they feel safe, that's when they're going to give you their all. So I started the handshake with, and I even did it with my third graders when I taught third grade. They need to know how to do a firm handshake when they go to a job, when they're going to get a job interview. The boss isn't going to go, "Hey, what's up?" and fist pump them. They need to
Right.
learn a firm handshake, and how
Yeah.
there's a sloppy handshake, there's a firm handshake, and your handshake says a lot about you.
It sure
So I
does.
teach them about why I do the handshake, why it has to be firm, making that eye contact. A lot of our kids, they can't make eye contact with adults, and so it's like, no, you make eye contact, because when you grow up and you go to this job interview, if you're not looking at them in the eyes, they're going to think you're not taking them seriously, and they don't want to hire somebody that doesn't want the job.
Or when you're the next inventor and you're pitching your next product,
Yes, and you
and you're
need an
pitching it to an
investor.
investor, or you're looking at your sales, you going out to sell, right? Just as go, you got to be able to look people in the eyes. You got to be able to conviction. You've got your product, right? This is
Yes.
huge. And you do that at even the third grade level.
Yes. And
Hot
so
dog. I love it.
I was feeling a little under the weather the other day, so I'm like, let me fist pump them. And they looked at me like I was crazy. Like, why aren't you shaking our hands? What's going on? And so it was a whole, I have to explain, I'm not feeling well. I don't want you to
Yeah.
get sick. Let's just do a fist
Elbow
bump.
bump.
Let's do an elbow.
Elbow there.
We'll get back to those
Right.
handshakings after I'm
Cool.
feeling better, you're feeling better.
And I think the interesting thing that you said there, if I can, is that you, as a kind of a residual effect of that, is that you can now judge by the handshake kind of the tone, the mood, the vibe, something's on, something's off, because you get to know your students. So yes, you're teaching them firm handshake, eye control, all that's great. There's this other part of it that's a more of a physical, emotional
Yes, it's
thing where
that
it's a
social
vibe. You're
emotional.
getting that connection with your kids, and that handshake is deep in terms of building the trust because
Yeah.
again, it goes back to somebody's got me. It's another. Your brain goes, oh, and this guy Gavin broke it down from like a neurochemistry
Mhm.
way of like oh, that's trust. This person, I can trust this person. Therefore, if I can't trust a person, close off, right?
Mhm.
If I can trust this person,
What
brain
is that? The
says,
affective
open up.
filter goes on, and I
Yes.
no longer can learn.
You don't, and then you don't have them versus open trust. Oh, I can learn, right? This is good.
Yes.
This is really good. I love it. That's cool. So you do that. And I see there's a need. So if let's talk about, teachers and entering into the profession. So if I'm thinking about it, or I'm actually about to enter, maybe I'm a little nervous. So if I'm entering, I might be a little nervous. Like, am I making the right decision? Or if I'm thinking about it, what do you say to these people what would your advice be if you were sitting and I'm like, hey, Patty, I think I'm going to go into teaching. I'm not quite sure. Or, oh, I'm going and I'm a little nervous. What would you say?
Okay, so take this as a two-part. First, if you're trying to do it, run away. Just kidding. Don't run away. It's such a
Run
fulfilling
in.
job. It's all full circle. Yes, it's going to be a struggle. Yes, you're going to have to learn new things. Sometimes you're going to have to learn it with the kids, and that's fine. It's okay to fail at things. Students know we're not perfect. They're not expecting us to be perfect. Embrace the failure that's going to come with it. It's inevitable. There's going to be lessons that go great. There's going to be lessons that don't go so great, and it's okay. But know that those 20, 25, 30 kiddos are there looking up to you.
Yeah.
And just it's a beautiful profession to go to. But now if you're already in it or you're barely about to start into it, I got loads of advice for you.
Okay.
First of it, build those relationships.
Hmm.
Once you have that trust, once they support you, once they feel supported by you, they learn best. They work best when they feel like they're seen. They work best when they feel like they're being supportive. It's all about creating that space where they feel like it's safe for me to take risks here. It's safe
Hmm.
for me to grow here. I'm not going to be criticized. I'm not just going to be disciplined if I get something wrong. I can make mistakes, I can learn from them, and I can grow from them. But students are not going to do that unless you build those relationships with them at first.
Yeah.
And then, of course, next up being don't be afraid to try new things. Throw in that robotics into that history lesson.
Hmm.
It's okay to try it. It's okay if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Um, it's when you try these new things, they see you're learning, so it's like, oh, my teacher's still learning new things, she's still growing, so I can still learn and I
Yeah.
can still learn new things. There's always going to be room for improvement.
Okay, cool. And then you said something there. Oh, I know. Okay, so I go back to me. You ever have one of me in there? That kid that's just like, oh, because I was bad. Gosh, I was so bad. It's horrible. When I think back on it, I'm like, God, you really were a mess. And it wasn't, it'd be one thing if I was just checked out, but I was just disruptive. Worse, right? I mean, the checked out kid you can take aside and then shy.
They're not interfering
I
with anybody
wanted.
else's learning.
I was like, somebody's going to pay attention to me, and the way I'm going to get it is to be a really, really pain in the you know
Yeah.
what. And so I was a colossal pain in the you know what. So how do you deal with a kid like me, like a little Scotty Buell that you just want to, come on,
So
man.
they get us those students are my love child, my love children.
They
I
are.
have to give them a little extra love, make sure
Uh-huh.
their handshake's a little bit more firm as
Yeah.
well as they're coming in, gauge them, make sure they're good. But if they're not good, it's making sure I make sure to talk to them first. All right, how's it going? What's going on? What's upsetting you? What happened? Because sometimes they're being disruptive because something happened somewhere else. Something happened
Hmm.
at home. Something happened in their previous class, and they're just upset and they're taking it out in this class. So they get a very special seat next to me so that they get a little extra loving and extra attention. So
Mm.
it's kill them with kindness. I'm not gonna get mad at you. Like, no, that's what you're trying to get a reaction out of me. You're probably trying to get a reaction out of your classmates. But now I'm just gonna give you a little extra love and attention so I can get back on target. Um,
Cool.
yes, but
Do you ever have
yes.
a breakthrough? Do you ever have one that you like was tough and you broke through and they changed, like they switched, their attitude changed? And I don't mean just in the moment, but I mean kind of like almost, I hate to use the word permanent, but like you saw a significant change from like rough, tough, whatever. And then, yeah, all of a sudden breakthrough and little Scotty seems to be doing just fine. Have you
I've
had
had
that?
plenty of those. When I was
Cool.
teaching third grade, um, there was that message of, hey, watch out, so and so's coming.
Uh-oh.
And it's like, no, I'm not gonna let that affect me. We're gonna learn about this kid first and foremost. Very rough child, very antsy, can't stay put. So
Mhm.
I fast forward, I finally got to him, unfortunately, the last semester I had him. I put him in a wagon. Random. I know, so random.
A
He
wagon.
asked me
Wait,
if he could sit in a wagon.
what,
And I
like a
said,
regular, like a red flyer
a
wagon?
regular wagon. Yes, a
Uh-huh.
red flyer wagon. And so he asked me, can I sit in it? Yeah, you know what? Yes, go ahead. Go sit in it. I was trying to work with another group of kids. Go sit in it. I keep on teaching. I'm going from group to group, making sure everyone's okay. And I don't hear him anymore. And I'm like, oh, where'd he go? I turned to the wagon. He was sitting in the wagon working.
Working. Any idea why the wagon?
No idea why the
No
wagon.
idea. Just
So
the
then the
wagon.
next year, he goes to fourth grade. My teacher bestie is the fourth grade teacher. And she's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. At this point, I had already moved schools. So I
Mm.
can't say like, hey, I'll go chat with him. We have a good relationship. Let me see what I can do because I'm at another school. I told
Yep.
her, do you have a wagon? She's like, yeah,
Did she
why?
get a wagon? Excuse
Put
me.
him in the wagon. She texted me later on. He's quiet and
So
doing
I
his
wonder
work.
what the wagon, I wonder what the significance of this wagon is.
But it just goes back to knowing your kids,
Yeah.
knowing what works for them and what doesn't. Some kids can't sit still and
Yeah.
they can't learn sitting in a chair. So sit them on a couch or let them not sit.
Let him not sit.
And I
Right.
know it doesn't look like your classroom is organized and
Right.
disciplined and
Right. Right.
structured,
Right.
but if my kids are learning, that's all that matters to me.
Well, this is it. That raises an interesting question. And I hate to keep bringing him up, but he just had so many interesting things last night because I asked him like what he said, you know, does your district give you the flexibility to teach the way you want to teach? Like in other words, you can let him sit in the wagon. You can stand up to work. I mean, I don't think everybody has that kind of flexibility or support. But are you given that?
For the most part, yes. I have a couch in my room. I have
Yeah.
these little like staircase, styrofoam staircase thing where they could sit on. I
Mhm.
have a chair with tall chairs, and they could sit there. So
Great.
yes, we do have a lot of flexible seating on this campus. At my previous school, we also had the permission to do so. Like I wasn't going to get docked if my kid was in the wagon. But
Got
for
it.
them, it was more funding. We didn't have the funding to buy the flexible seating. So it was more so what we brought into our
Uh-huh.
classrooms
Yeah.
to where they could um, have flexible seating. But my new school has a lot of different options.
Great.
Some have cushions on the floor and they can sit on the floor.
And they'll
So
let you bring dirt in if you want to teach about dirt.
they'll let me bring dirt in. I just have to make sure
It's
it makes sense. It's
yeah, right.
aligned.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
teaching with something for my world
That's right.
cultures kids.
Yeah.
We did a traveling around the world for their review before their district assessment, and so they got to pick a country. They had us
Hmm.
travel to their country by giving us the political, economical, geographical, all that good stuff. But then they bought a dish that was from their country or a treat to share with the class
Hmm.
from their country, and just the facts that they remembered just by having a croissant while learning
Yeah.
about France or having a Toblerone when learning about Switzerland. It's those little things that you bring
Yeah.
in. It goes back to what you were mentioning about the touch, that
Yeah.
it's something that connects to the lesson, but not necessarily completely connects
Got
to
it.
the lesson.
Yeah.
It triggers them to, oh,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, there go the lights. It's all right. No, no. See, teachers. So we all, we all get it. I've been in them. The lights go. You have to move around. You have to do the dance,
Yeah.
right?
And do
Well,
the hokey pokey and
we
turn
haven't had
ourselves around.
the PA. We haven't been interrupted by the PA yet.
Yes. But there go those sensor lights, trying to
There they
conserve
are.
energy.
Conserve the
Um,
energy. It's all right. It's only for a split second. It wasn't noticeable.
yes, that was actually the best time it's done that. Normally it goes completely dark and I have to push the button. But this time it worked with me just standing up over here.
Pretty good.
Nice.
Pretty good. Yeah. Cool.
For
So,
sure.
all right. I'm looking at your time, so I want to be mindful of it. So, I have another question for you. And this is kind of how I like to end these podcasts with this. I'm an optimist, right? Like, so my business partner, he's a bit of I don't want to call him a pessimist. He's a cynic. He's a little bit cynical, right? He's got a healthy dose of cynicism, and I'm this like hopeless optimist. I mean, I can do everything, right? He's like, well, sometimes you got to pull you out of the clouds. So, in the light of though being an optimist, like what? It's easy to get by. I feel like it's really easy to fall into the negative. It's all around you. The news will
for
have you
sure.
believe the sky is falling every day.
Yes.
When in fact, the opposite is true. There's a lot of amazing people doing a lot of great things in the world. There's a lot of good in the world.
Yeah.
What are you optimistic about in terms of education? Like, and it doesn't have to be tech, it can be anything, but you decide what it is for you. But what excites you and what gets you like, I'm optimistic about this.
So I'm super excited about the growing emphasis of STEM, and not just in the robotics classroom, not just after school for drones clubs, but incorporating STEM activities into the history class, into any other class, just because going back to that touch, the build, the create, it's higher on the Bloom's taxonomy when they're creating something, when they're touching something, building something, it helps them remember it more. And then I'm super excited about how it's becoming more inclusive, how it's becoming more accessible, and engaging for all students. I've been coaching this all-girls robotics team for 5 years, and seeing them go out and break stereotypes and opening doors for themselves, for others. Like I mentioned earlier, that girl-powered workshop, Girls in Gears, they're empowering other girls. So it's now not just them being empowered, but them going around and empowering others to try new things. Just seeing them highlight the importance of female representation and creating those supportive spaces for girls in underrepresented communities to explore STEM. It keeps me optimistic about where we're headed with education.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I just got back from FETC and I remember walking around just thinking to myself, boy, this is wild. Like, there's so much cool stuff here to teach with. And it wasn't all super high tech, but there was some really neat stuff. I was thinking, man, these kids are lucky today. Like, I didn't have any of this growing up. I grew up I went to elementary school in the 70s. There was like nothing. There was chalkboards and erasers and things, right? And so like
Swapping those erasers.
we didn't get to do any of this cool. There were no drones, there were no robots, there was,
VR headsets.
Yeah, there was none of this stuff. So it's pretty cool. So, look, I agree with you. I think the emphasis on, a few things. I think we're all starting to realize, and a lot of people are starting to realize that the way we've been teaching has to become much more hands-on. Even for the young ones, learning through play, learning through doing, almost apprenticeshipy feeling, getting in there, failing, making mistakes, working in groups. I think COVID taught us that the online alone thing isn't going to be, it doesn't work, especially for the young kids. I think businesses, I know there's a lot of pushback on businesses. And look, my wife and I were talking about this last night, walking the dogs. There are some roles that you can be home. If you're a data entry person, there's no reason that you need to sit in 2 hours of traffic every day to sit and do the same exact thing there. But when you're in a creative environment, when you're building things, I think about engineering and, building product and the next generation of technology or what it is that's really hard to do virtually. It works to a degree. I can only take our experience here at this company, Drone Legends, is that we were started during the pandemic, so we are all remote. And And it's interesting because we create a lot of stuff, right? You like you like gimbal? Look what I got, a little prototype of our little drone gimbal. Isn't he cool?
Love it. That is
Isn't
so
gimbal?
cute.
Isn't he awesome? So he's gonna be, so we
Yes.
make things, we create, right? We've got, we create stuff like little legends and all this stuff. And it's, what happens is that there's none of that, hey, having lunch and going like somebody making some comment and being like, no, 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 no. Oh, wow. What are you doing? Oh, that's really cool. Let me see what you're working on. We talk and then Zoom shuts off and everybody's alone.
Yes. It's the social interaction. We need
It
the
is.
social interaction.
It is. And I'm glad to see that this STEM world is still, the reason I say that is that, to your point, I think a few things are happening. STEM is absolutely at the forefront, and STEM is everything. Now, I'm going to throw another name out at you, Chris Woods.
Mhm.
You know Chris, Daily
Yes.
STEM? Yeah, so he introduced me to Omar, who introduced me. So he does this. He's amazing at this, right? So he will literally find STEM. It's everywhere. It's all around you, right? Like, hey, here's a leaf. And look, the raindrop fell on the leaf. And oh, by the way, that's a magnifying agent now. Like all these cool things. He'll be in the supermarket and just be like, hey, look at these grid pattern and see this. And so it's all around you. To your point, STEM in history is absolutely, what were they building, right? A crystal radio to use, a compass with a magnet and needle and thread was actually, how do I find true north with that? That's STEM. That's me. So we're moving in that direction. I think the other thing is we realize that the hands-on learning through play at the young ages is also kind of becoming, okay, we need more of that. That's going to be fun. So opening up classrooms, letting teachers have a little more autonomy with how they teach, to your point, within certain guidelines, right? You have to get some things approved, but at the end of the day, trusting teachers to flex their creativity and know, you said this earlier, the energy of your room, the students.
Yes.
On an intimate level, your students, and you can tell by a handshake whether she's having a rough day or something's off. So better than anybody, aside from their parents, perhaps, and in some cases, I'd argue you spend more time with them than their parents do, of how to run your room and what and what you need. And so I think a lot, we're seeing that, at least in my experience lately. I've been in some really neat classrooms and I'm like, oh yeah, you're rocking this thing. Like, this is so cool. No wonder your kids love to come to class. It's interesting. You make learning fun. Yes. This is great.
And that's when it's going to stick with them. When it's fun, when it's engaging, that's when it says, oh, I do need to listen. Oh, I can connect this to, I was planting that seed. And then we learned about the boom and bust cycle of cotton. Or I built a model of the Alamo using my Vex pieces. And now I remember what happened during the revolution.
Yeah, I love it. So, any last words before we sign off? Anything you want to say to everybody out there? Words of inspiration, hope, whatever it is. This is your shot. Sign us off.
Ooh, so I like this quote from Albert Einstein. He says, "A person who never made a mistake never tried anything new." So don't let the fear of failure keep you from trying anything new, because that's when we're learning, by making mistakes and learning from them.
Absolutely. Well, Patty, it has been a genuine pleasure. Thank you so much. You're amazing. I could talk with you forever. You've got so much energy and I love it. I'm sure people are going to get a lot out of this.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott.
Oh, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Likewise. Bye-bye.